We noticed the chickens had eaten down that run. I mean, there are weeds, but underneath the weeds it's just chicken compost and some of it is mud. And so we went ahead and opened that gate and let them in here. But we also, we keep forgetting that when you let the weeds just grow, they shade out the grass. So we had to weed whack some of these weeds, and it doesn't look good underneath there, but right here there's plenty of grass underneath the weeds. So we're gonna let them in here. I'm hoping that this will satisfy them for about a month, and then we'll move them into the experimental garden, which I know I said I'd never weed, and I didn't, but we are starting to, again, like I said, weed whack it so that grass can grow up. So we weed whacked a little section. It was grown, well, you can kind of see how high it was grown in between the sunflowers. So my husband whacked down a bunch of those weeds. I need to cut down some of those weeds that have turned into trees. So we're not weeding certainly, but we're just getting it down so that in about a month when we move them in here, they'll have actual grass to eat. So the sunflowers are still doing great. The cucumbers, I think the biggest issue, you can see that little cucumber, the biggest issue is going to be finding the cucumbers among the weeds so we can actually harvest them. But I found one. You see it right there? We'll have to get that one today. But yeah, that's going to be the biggest issue. The corn, I think that's a bust. Just because it's not doing really well outgrowing the Bermuda grass. The beans don't seem to be doing great. But the kale back in there is doing great. So, you know, planting kale in the shade, that does well. I could probably next year plant some lettuce, and then along this south-facing fence, I can plant things like, you know, cucumbers and sunflowers. So those are my notes to myself for next year on the experimental garden. Okay, now on to the main garden. So we fenced in the entire thing. We still have electric fencing at the bottom. I put blackberry canes at the top for like barbed wire. You can see, well, if you know anything about wild blackberries, they're very thorny. So it doesn't look pretty, but I don't care. The goal is to keep out the groundhogs down here, and if that doesn't keep out the raccoons as well, then at least maybe that will. We are harvesting strawberries and blueberries since we've done this. Well, the blueberries we're harvesting because my husband put up that bird netting, but we are harvesting strawberries since we've put up the big fence around the garden. So that's good. But I think the real test is going to be when the corn comes in and when the watermelon comes in, to see if, you know, if it truly is keeping out the raccoons. We also, as you can see, have scare tape for the crows, because even though we are harvesting more strawberries, a lot of the strawberries will be kind of cut where you can see a bird's gotten into it. Like I said, we're getting some blueberries. And raspberries, mainly because of the netting. Let's see, I showed you last week the carrots, which looked pretty pitiful, and they're looking a lot better this week. The tomatoes are still coming on. Not much is ripening though. Just waiting on those. Let's see. But they're getting pretty big. Our first eggplant is looking good. I'll harvest that soon. This just looks like a pile of weeds, but that's our lettuce. The reason it doesn't look very good right now is just because I'm harvesting it. So still harvesting lettuce. Probably will be done with that, my guess is, in a week or so. Just because it's getting pretty steady in the mid-90s now, and lettuce doesn't like that. This is our first pepper, and it looks like it's starting to turn. I don't actually know what it's going to be, if it's going to be yellow or orange. So we're getting a little bit, some cherry tomatoes, but for the most part, just waiting for tomatoes to ripen. What else? My gladiolas are starting to bloom. Love my gladiolas. Like I said, we're getting some strawberries. These beans are getting pretty holy, way more than those beans ever were. And I had some extra DE after putting DE around the base of the zucchini plants, and so I think I'm going to start putting DE on these because they have not flowered yet, so I'm going to try to do it before they flower. Try to get them healthy. We're still planting up, transplanting sweet potatoes. So that box is done. Next, I'll do this box, and then I'll do over there by the beets, which I should check the beets. They're probably ready to harvest too. Corn's looking good. I have some corn here, some corn over there, right next to the fence, so that'll be a good test to see what that does, you know, if it keeps the raccoons out. This is where I've been harvesting the beans. Oops, I left out a zucchini. I'm glad I came back in here. We have been harvesting more zucchini than we ever have, and our plants look better than they ever have. So I think that DE at the base before they start flowering really helps with the squash bugs. The potatoes are doing remarkably well. I'll have to look back at my videos to see when they typically die back, but I always think they die back too early. And I mean, these are starting to yellow a little bit, but these were the first ones I planted. But as far as potato bugs go, I didn't find any potato bugs today when I was looking for them for DE, and I only found one potato bug over there in that potato patch. So that's very unusual for my potato patches, so I'm really excited. And we're still getting some peas from the potato patch. You can see down there. So I don't know what made them do so well, but the peas were so easy to plant. I think I'm going to stick with that every year. And we'll see, you know, when I actually dig them up, what a difference the actual harvest makes. Okay, one observation I did have about the strawberries is everything has always grown well underneath the apple tree, even though they say don't plant underneath trees. But I do think that those strawberries right underneath the apple tree were a little shaded because we haven't gotten any actual strawberries from them. You know, the plants are doing great, but the actual strawberries come from the periphery. And that where it looks a little sparse, that's not because they didn't grow well. That's where I ripped out plants, strawberry plants that were coming up, and gave them to people so that I'd have more of a row, so that the strawberry plants wouldn't be all smushed together. But so I think I'll probably pull those out and give them to people, the ones right underneath, and just, you know, keep to right around the apple tree. Another thing I noticed was this past fall when we put down chicken manure. So typically we'll clean out the chicken coop and put what's on the bottom of the chicken coop, which is a mixture of sawdust and composted chicken manure. And then we'll top that, we'll, you know, just toss it onto here, and then we'll also put mulch just to lay down the leaves of the strawberry plants, not to bury them, just to lay them down. And so this past year, I don't remember, you know, why we didn't, but this past year what we did was all we had was non-composted, so it wasn't like fluffy. It was more just straight up thick manure. And so we just kind of plopped it on, and I think either those thick patties of manure didn't, you know, let some of the strawberry plants come up through, or this is also the third year, and this is typically when people say you need to replant. And so it could be just that we had a lot more that didn't come through the mulch because it was time for them to, you know, compost and die. Either way, this is not what we normally have. We normally have a full mat of strawberry plants, but we also aren't able to harvest very much, and the strawberries have not been as huge as they are this year. So I actually really like, I mean, I'm not going to go try and, you know, put a whole bunch of manure on them every year, because I don't think that's necessarily the best. But we've never had such huge strawberries until this year. And part of me thinks it's because they're so spaced out, they get a lot more sun. I don't know. That's just a thought. These are the ever-bearing ones. Hey, so I think that is the garden. I think I showed you everything. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.